My name is Kyra Boyd, and I'm the Public Information Officer for the Winston-Salem Police Department. Today's news conference will cover the department's efforts to reduce gun violence in our city. You will hear from Assistant Chief Wilson Weaver, that's Wilsonweaver, and Lieutenant Amy Gaudin, that's Amygauldin. And we'll also be hearing from Corporal Mohamedou Demay, that's Mouhamadou, Demay, Dime, from our Traffic Enforcement Unit. And he will be discussing reducing traffic fatalities in our city as well. We ask that you save any questions until the end. And right now, I will turn it over for our welcome and memorial to our fallen officers by Chief Katrina Thompson.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Good morning. I am Police Chief Katrina Thompson, and on behalf of the women and men of the Winston-Salem Police Department, I welcome you to our special edition of our June Public Safety News Conference. Before I begin, please join me in recognizing our fallen officers who's paid the ultimate sacrifice during the months of April and May. Senior Police Officer Bobby F. Bean. End of watch, April 23rd, 1993. Officer Bean was shot and killed while serving a search warrant for drugs. The suspect, a 38-year-old male, was found guilty of first-degree murder and received a sentence of life in prison. Patrolman Michael M. Vickers. End of watch, May 19th, 1895. On May 18th, 1895, a physical altercation occurred between the suspects and two officers. During the altercation, the suspect produced a handgun and shot Officer Vickers, and he died the following day. The suspect was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Now please join me in a moment of silence as we honor those officers and all of the women and men across our country who's paid the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you. I want to take this time to recognize, acknowledge, and thank the women and men of the Winston-Salem Police Department who just this week demonstrated the sacrifices that they are willing to make to protect our home, our community, and members of our city. Your work does not go unnoticed, and I thank you. Upcoming events. BLET graduation for Class 76 will be held tomorrow, Thursday, June 17th at 10 a.m. at the Benton Convention Center. We ask that you come out and help us celebrate and congratulate these 18 women and men who relentlessly went through this rigorous training despite the stoppages that the pandemic caused. We're extremely proud of them, and as you all know, we need every one of them. Our Youth Citizen Police Academy will be held next month from July 26th through July 30th. Teenagers interested in the program may sign up on the Winston-Salem Police Department's website. Now I ask that Assistant Chief Wilson Weaver please join me at the podium for the next part of the presentation. I'm sorry, and also Lieutenant Amy Gaudin.
Good morning, Winston-Salem. I am W.S. Weaver II, your Assistant Police Chief over the Patrol and Special Operations Divisions of the Winston-Salem Police Department. Today, we're bringing to the Public Safety News Conference information regarding WSPD initiatives to reduce gun violence across our community. With me is Lieutenant Amy Galden. As you all know, the City of Winston-Salem and the Winston-Salem Police Department, as well as Forsyth County and the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, continue to be committed to reducing gun violence across our community. This has been significantly increasing over the past several years. And this past weekend, we experienced 3 homicides and others injured as a direct result of gun violence. On Monday, our District 1 substation was attacked by a subject with an assault rifle. Our officers were engaged in a rolling gunfight during a vehicle pursuit that ended in front of R.J. Reynolds High School. It continued on foot into Haynes Park, where our residents were enjoying outdoor activities before the suspect could be apprehended. Later in our investigation, we determined that the same subject was most likely involved in committing 2 homicides prior to attacking our police facility. Gun violence is not just a Forsyth County problem, but it's occurring all across the Piedmont Triad. It's occurring across the state of North Carolina. It's occurring across our country. We continue to expend significant efforts to address gun violence and to ensure a safer community for our residents, our businesses, and our visitors. As you well know, we're receiving a number of demands from our community to reduce gun violence, which we know also involves both juveniles in their mid-teens and adults. 2 of our homicide arrests within the past few weeks were of 15-year-olds. So with the Winston-Salem Police Department, our city council and city government has worked tirelessly since 2018 to start bringing technology into the fold to help us reduce gun violence. In 2018, the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network was brought in. We started a violent firearms investigations team in 2019. Last year in 2020, we started the Gun Crime Reduction Unit, or G-Crew as we call them. This year, we'll be bringing online a real-time crime center as well as ShotSpotter, which we'll discuss in this presentation. Some of our other units that are investigating firearm offenses include our Criminal Investigations Division, whose primary responsibility for major crime solution includes investigations of homicides, robberies, burglaries, sexual assaults, etc. We have street crimes units that are assigned to each district, and they're responsible for concentrated enforcement of street-level crime of all types throughout each district. Our gang unit is responsible for conducting investigations involving gangs, gang-related crimes and activity, and providing intelligence on gang members being investigated by law enforcement. And our Special Weapons and Tactics Team, or SWAT, is responsible for handling various high-risk law enforcement incidents such as armed barricaded subjects, hostage rescues, high-risk arrest, and dignitary protection. Our Gun Crime Reduction Unit, their purpose is the immediate response and investigation of gun crimes involving discharging firearms into a dwelling, a business, a vehicle, and/or incidents where an individual may be injured by gunfire. They also apprehend violent offenders where the Special Weapons and Tactics Team has not assumed that investigation or apprehension. And our Gun Crime Reduction Unit also engages in proactive policing in areas where gun violence has repeatedly occurred to reduce additional gun crime incidents. We've also initiated a new partnership with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. That includes the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office saturation patrols. They're partnered with our G-Crew unit so that we have additional law enforcement presence in those areas that have been known to be prevalent through data for gun violence. I'll let Lieutenant Galden speak on the Violent Firearms Investigations Team.
Good morning. Another team that we have created in 2019 was a Violent Firearms Investigation Team. And their responsibility is to utilize technology to identify some of the most prolific trigger pullers in the community. They identify the violent offenders, and they work very closely with our local, state, and federal partners. We have a strong partnership with the ATF. We have 2 task force officers on the violent firearms team, as well as 1 full-time ATF agent. They're proactive in the community based on the technology that they utilize, and their main goal is to reduce crime and the fear of crime itself. Some background about some of our statistics in 2020 and compared to January 2021 through May 25th, 2021. As you can see, we've had 12 fatal shooting victims as of May 25th, and as of today, that number has risen to 19. There was 81 non-fatal shooting victims as of May 25th, and as of today, that has rose to 94 non-fatal shooting victims since January 1st. You can see our discharging firearms calls is over 1,000 as compared to 3,129 for 2020, as well as 359 crime guns recovered and over 100 crime guns linked in NIBIN, which we'll discuss later. NIBIN has also produced over 300 leads, which is investigative leads that the VFIT team utilizes to identify the trigger pullers in our community. They operate VFIT, G-Crew, the Real-Time Crime Center, and several of these entities that we're discussing today are operating under what we call a Crime Gun Intelligence Center model. So we utilize technology to drive the investigations, data-driven investigations. We've established the investigative teams that are responsible for this, and they coordinate the efforts throughout the agency. And as I mentioned, they use the forensic technology, which drives the investigations and prosecutions that we work with closely with the DA's office. The partnerships that we utilize as well to ensure successful prosecution are critical. We utilize NIBIN and consistently collect all evidence that we can at these scenes to connect the dots. NIBIN is our National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, where we compare evidence seized at scenes to help us link those incidents across our city. It lets us know crime guns and different things that are utilized at different incidents that we can connect the dots and figure out who's involved and link the incident so the investigators can proactively target those offenders. Some of our NIBIN statistics, there's over 131 agencies across the state that utilize NIBIN as well. And as you can see, based on Winston-Salem, we're doing very well with NIBIN. We've generated over 1,200 leads based on NIBIN and the evidence collected in the NIBIN system. And in the region, there's 31 other agencies that utilize NIBIN as well. And so compared to our percent of leads to acquisition, which is the evidence entered, which generates leads, we're above both the region and the state average. So they're working very hard and diligent in getting that evidence in and helping us proactively develop those leads that we can share across the agency and with our other law enforcement partners. As Assistant Chief Weaver mentioned, we'll also implement ShotSpotter in the coming months, which is a gunshot detection system that utilizes an acoustic array of sensors that's placed throughout the community. This is a quick graphic here to show you how essentially that the system works. For us, it will cover a 3 square mile radius within our city, and hopefully we'll implement that early summer of this year. Also, our Real-Time Crime Center, we started in 2021. We started a small-scale temporary version of a Real-Time Crime Center, which is phase 1 that you can see here. Phase 1, we just have 2 detectives assigned to the Real-Time Crime Center, and they work to actively investigate intelligence that comes to the agency and share that throughout our agency. And phase 1, we did as a temporary setup, as the second floor of the Public Safety Center is being renovated, and we received the 2020 Strategies and Policing Innovation Grant, which will fund the full-time Real-Time Crime Center, which will be housed on the second floor of the Public Safety Center. So for us, even the temporary setup was a game changer. It has been critical in several investigations to this point where we've utilized existing technology and camera infrastructure that already exists in the community to help us generate leads and solve crimes faster and much easier. It has been a game changer for us. It's really helped us in investigations where prior to that technology, we wouldn't have been able to do so. In phase 2, we anticipate a much larger room, and we'll discuss that later, and have a media day that when we have that developed, we'll be able to share with you all. And it will have additional personnel assigned to where we can capitalize on existing camera infrastructure, and other resources and technology that we hope to implement as part of the full-time project. It will allow the detectives in the Real-Time Crime Center to operate and share with officers and hopefully enhance operational intelligence of the agency, and with a proactive emphasis on officer, citizen, and community safety. I'm going to switch here real quick and show a quick video from WXII that just gave us, it allows a brief overview of the Real-Time Crime Center, and it discusses some of the technology within.
Inside the Winston-Salem Public Safety Center behind me, Winston-Salem police are using some existing resources combined with some new technology to fight crime more efficiently in the Real-Time Crime Center.
So the Real-Time Crime Center has been a long-term goal for the agency that we've been able to develop recently. In January, we began the temporary setup of our Real-Time Crime Center, which is just a small-scale version of what we hope to evolve into.
Plans are already being made to grow into a more sophisticated space, but for now, the Real-Time Crime Center compiles resources such as security camera locations to help law enforcement. Individuals and businesses can register their security or doorbell cameras with the Real-Time Crime Center. The department doesn't gain access to any footage without your permission, but the registration saves the department time that otherwise would be spent trying to identify any private security cameras near a crime's location.
So we would essentially send an email request to the camera owner. They still have the right to share what they want based on our request. And then they send that in, so we don't have an officer knocking on everybody's door or business. It saves time for the person who owns the camera footage, and we're able to do it obviously much more efficiently and get things done and hopefully solve crime even faster.
Funding for the project came from a $700,000 grant included in the 2020 Strategies for Policing Innovation project. Lieutenant Golden says respecting individuals' privacy remains a priority.
And it's really just utilizing existing camera infrastructure throughout the city. So it's not going out there and doing anything new or anything different. It already exists. It's just how we access that is what we're changing.
In fact, it was a nearby camera registered with the Real-Time Crime Center that helped police make an arrest in the Monday night shooting of a 4-year-old boy on New Hope Lane. Lieutenant Golden says the center can even utilize the technology to help other agencies.
For instance, if we have trauma victims, whether it's gunshot related or accident related, we're able to ascertain what kind of injury they sustained and relay that to medical facilities in the area, so they're able to prepare for treatment.
And the hope is to have the full Real-Time Crime Center available for use by the end of this year, and anyone who wants to register their camera can find a link to do so on our website. In Winston-Salem, Fort Hatchett, WXII 12 News.
So when we answer the question of what is WSPD doing about gun crime, we've dedicated a tremendous amount of resources and personnel to impact violent crime in our community. As you can see here, the Real-Time Crime Center goal is to be the hub of some of this information and utilize the technology within our community. We worked hand in hand with our partners and other entities involved in conjunction with the Real-Time Crime Center include, as we discussed, VFIP, NIBIN, G-Crew, ShotSpotter. And I'll briefly mention the Community Connect Sharing Program and Camera Registry as well, which was mentioned in the video. The Community Connect Sharing Program is a program that we allow commercial businesses to participate in our camera sharing program if they choose to do so. By doing this, it allows them to share their live video feeds, external, internal, whatever they choose to do. The parameters are specifically defined by the person who shares those cameras. And they can also integrate with panic buttons. So different things, if there's an incident at their business that they would like us to be able to have live stream access to immediately, they have the ability to do so by participating in this program. Camera registry is for private citizens to simply register just the location of their camera. It does not allow the police department to access that camera feed at any point in time without the camera owner's permission. So the way this works is the link is on the city's website for the police department, and people can register their camera. And so if there's an incident in their neighborhood, that we can reach out to them electronically via email. They'll send an email request. We'll ask them for specific footage from a specific time frame, and the camera owner still retains the right whether or not they choose to share that video. If they look, for example, today between 8 and 9 a.m., if we have an incident, they can then email that request to us. So it allows us to access that information much faster, quicker, and hopefully it gives them the opportunity to help us and partner and engage with us in fighting crime.
So as you're aware, our city council is discussing efforts at a proposed gun buyback initiative We did that in 2014, where a total of 488 total weapons were surrendered, with a total of over $44,000 paid out to our citizens to surrender those weapons. We had 297 handguns, 84 shotguns, and 107 rifles all turned in to us. We're hoping that a new initiative in this year, if this passes through our city council, will assist in this gun buyback initiative so that we can get some of the weapons that are no longer wanted off the street. Before I take questions, as a further effort for us to reduce violent crime in our community, our residents should expect additional contacts from our law enforcement officers. These are going to consist of both voluntary encounters with law enforcement as well as increased traffic stops by our law enforcement officers. Please keep in mind that every single day we receive neighborhood complaints of speeding and other driving offenses occurring in our neighborhoods that are scaring our community residents. And so what this means is if our motoring public is riding dirty, meaning that they're speeding, running stop signs and stop lights, DWI, no seat belts, loud music, no or revoked driver's licenses, no or expired registration plates, no insurance or expired vehicle inspections or any other violations of North Carolina motor vehicle law, our people should expect to be stopped by law enforcement. And we're hoping that our actions to remove illegal weapons, as well as the shooters that are traveling through our neighborhoods in vehicles, will assist in reducing gun violence throughout our community. We're available for any questions that you may have. Seeing no questions, we'll move. Yes, sir.
As with most technology, it's rather expensive, and we received the funding to support the initial project with ShotSpotter through a grant, a $700,000 CJIT grant in 2019 is when the grant was awarded, and we're just reaching the implementation stages now. Of course, we will evaluate the technology. It's a 3-year grant, so we have the technology for 3 square mile radius over the 3-year period. During that time, we'll implement the process to evaluate the technology, so at the end of that 3-year grant, we certainly will evaluate the effectiveness of it and the ability for the city to expand that should the need arise.
No, there's a lot of speculation, and you can go through across the news organizations and see what the speculation is, but there's nothing that anybody can pinpoint. There are a vast array of guns available out here. Guns are being stolen on about a daily basis across our country. Some of those guns end up being utilized in crime. We have a low lack of caring about each other, and so people now are resolving their incidents through gun violence. When they're having conflicts, they're resolving those conflicts through gun violence. And so one of the things the Winston-Salem Police Department is telling our people, walk away from all conflicts. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, gives you the bird or anything else, let it go, drive on away. If somebody says something to you that's inappropriate, drive away or walk away. Just stay away from all conflicts, because you don't know who out here is carrying a weapon, nor what their actual state is, whether they're having mental illness issues or whether they're impaired by some substance. Walk away. It's not worth getting into any type of conflict now because gun violence has become so prevalent. Keep in mind that we have no ability to predict who has a weapon, who has the mindset of utilizing that weapon, or when and where some type of event is going to occur. We're in a response mode to these things. We're doing all of the things that we know to do to try and reduce gun violence. And it is increasing, not only in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, but across the country. And that's just the state of where we are across our country, where we're resolving those conflicts now through gunfire. Chief Thompson has additional comments related to that.
I appreciate that question. In relationship to that, we're showing you, we're asked all the time, what is the police department doing to address crime? Well, we're telling you, these are the things that we're doing to address crime. We're also telling you, we can't do it alone. It's going to take everybody in this community working together to reduce these numbers. When neighborhoods let people know that they can't come to you can't come to my community, my neighborhood, and commit crime and think we're going to harbor you. When that attitude starts to take place, when people start to talk, we have a homicide that just occurred where over 100 people were out there, and maybe 2 people ultimately ended up coming down and talking to us. Some of this was on Facebook. A lot of it is discussed on social media. This is what the police department is doing, and we'll continue to look for ways to reduce crime. But we can't do it alone. It's not a police problem, it's a community problem. And it's going to take this whole community and communities across the country doing their part to address it. We're telling you what our part is. Now, we want to know, what investment are other people willing to make to stop this crime? If they came to the police department and shot up the police department, the substation, if they're shooting at officers, you know what they will continue to do to citizens in our community. We got to work together, Winston-Salem, to solve violent crime in our community. If there's something else you know that we can do, tell us what it is. We want it to end. I live in Winston-Salem. We want it to end. This is what we're doing, and we're thinking and talking through and brainstorming and reading and researching. We're going to training. We're talking to our colleagues. We're doing everything we know to do to solve this crime. And you're right. These numbers are being affected very, very little to change it. It's going to take all of us working together. I hope that answered your question. Sure. So tell me, do you know of and I do agree that mental health play a large part in some of what we're seeing. I believe that we have some unaddressed mental health issues. And I've said this time and time again. When unaddressed social issues, mental issues, medical issues, when those issues are unaddressed over a long period of time, they can very easily become criminal issues. Again, we've got to start dealing with the root of the problem and not just addressing the fruit of the problem. Yes. So the question was, what does the increase in the workload, how is that affecting our staffing levels? Well, as you know, with everything that's going on, there's a number of reasons why there's not a lot of people breaking the door down to become police officers in our agency or any other agency. So we're dealing with the lack of interest in the profession. We're dealing with some of the negative publicity about the profession. And then we have some law enforcement officers who've been doing this job for years, but they're seeing how they're being villainized across the country, and they're deciding it's just not worth it to stay in it. and they are doing everything they can to get out of it, unfortunately. And I am seeing that right here in my own agency. We will continue to do the efforts towards recruiting. We're adding technology to help add extra eyes to take the place of the people that we don't have. We're making adjustments where we can with our manpower. We're constantly getting calls from citizens asking for more patrol here, more people there. You know, we have all kinds of issues going on that, again, it's the nature of what we do, and we're used to addressing them, but we have to prioritize violent crime is where we put our resources, and that's what we're doing. Thank you.
We have Twitter. We're also utilizing social media through Facebook, through the City of Winston-Salem page. So yes, we're trying to reach out to as many people as we can to get all types of information. You know, Crime Stoppers is always available. We've got a text-to-tip program that's also been placed in an order for us to receive information relating to these crimes. A lot of this information, we just need to be pointed in the correct direction so that we can try and solve those crimes. Next, I'll introduce Officer Mohamedou Damé, who's going to talk about some of the speeding issues that we're having throughout our community.
Good morning. I'm Corporal Dime with the Traffic Enforcement Unit. I have a short presentation on speeding in residential streets, as well as pedestrian safety and school zone safety. I have a short video that members of the Traffic Enforcement Unit, as well as city marketing, helped us to put together. And the purpose of this video is just to educate the public about speeding in residential streets, and hopefully let them know that we'll be in your neighborhood, you know, just enforcing traffic laws. Hey, I'm Officer Don with the Winston-Salem Police Department Traffic Enforcement Unit, and I'm here to tell you how you can help protect lives just as we protect and serve the community. Speeding in residential areas and neighborhood is the most common citizen complaint that we receive at the police department. Even the city council members are receiving the same complaints. This issue is one that can only be fixed if we all come together as one in the community. Speeding in residential areas is a danger to pedestrians, bicyclists, and especially to our children that are outside playing. This is why we are stepping up our enforcement of speed limit on residential streets. We want to reduce the number of traffic crashes and fatalities in residential areas and neighborhoods. Our job as police officers is to protect lives and properties. As a member of the Traffic Enforcement Unit, we believe that strict enforcement of traffic laws does improve compliance and reduces the number of traffic accidents. Keep watching for what could be you the next time you're caught speeding in a residential area. You have your license and registration? And here's your license and registration bag. So you're being cited for speeding in a residential area, as well as violation of city rules. You have a mandatory court period from the 8th, 2021. Don't show up. Any questions? Slow down a little bit, all right?
It's delightful.
Seriously? But it's a total...
So for the past couple of years, the traffic enforcement unit been doing LiDAR campaign around the city, but our focus was the major thoroughfares. So for example, Highway 52, Highway 52, US 421. We've been doing a lot of LiDAR campaign as part of the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program. So because we've seen an increase in speeding in residential streets as well as neighborhoods, we decided to come up with this speeding campaign called Slow Your Ride Where We Reside. And its main purpose is just to educate the public about speeding in residential streets. These are some of the top location that we've had for the past year. So in 2021 so far, these are the top speeding location that we've had. District 1, we got Tice Avenue, which is definitely a speeding zone because the speed limit is 25, but when we went out there about a month ago, we noticed that a lot of the drivers are doing minimum 40 miles per hour. District 2, Martindale is a good area, and District 3, Solace Creek Parkway between Wake Forest and Country Club is also a good area. This graph here just shows the probability of a person dying as a result of a traffic collision. So if a driver is doing 20 miles per hour, he or she has a total stopping distance of 110 feet. So the black shaded area is just your perception reaction distance, and the yellow area is actual braking distance. So that gives you a total stopping distance of 110 feet. And at that speed, there's a 10% probability that the pedestrian might die as a result of the crash. At 30 miles per hour, there's a 50% probability that that person might die. And at 40 miles per hour, it goes to 90%. So you think about it, on a 25-mile speed limit, it's easy for you to do 40. And at that speed, if a child or a pedestrian darts onto the roadway, there's a 90% chance that that person might not survive the crash. And depending on, the weight of your car and the speed as well. So when reporting these speeding issues, the problem that we face is that a lot of people aren't telling us exactly what time of the day or the speeding occurring or what day of the week this is actually occurring. So we might respond to a certain location and sit there for about an hour or two and maybe get 2 or 3 speeders. Well, that's because we're there at the wrong time. So when reporting these speeding issues, it's definitely beneficial if you tell us like exactly where it's occurring, the time, and the date. Another thing that residents can do is try to educate your neighbors by spreading the word and just telling them, try to educate them about the danger of speeding in residential streets. And using yard signs, that's also beneficial because if you have a yard sign displaying, children at play or drive like your kids live here, it tends to remind drivers that, hey, this is a residential street, so let me slow down a little bit. Another thing you can do is setting a pace. What I mean by that is, let's say it's rush hour and people are trying to get to work or coming back to work. If you set a pace by driving maybe speed limit or below the speed limit, it forces the people behind you to drive the same speed limit as you. Another thing you can do is park your car legally along the streets. By doing that, it naturally narrows the road a little bit. That way people are forced to slow down. Reminders, always obey the speed limit. If you see people outside, give them the courtesy and slow down. If you can't see them, they can't see you. Always check your blind spots. Be extra cautious for children playing while you back up. But with technology now, backup cameras, that definitely helps a lot. This brings us to our next presentation, pedestrian safety. So this year so far, well, this was as of April of 2021. These numbers has definitely increased since then. As of April of 2021, we had 16 total pedestrian crashes, 2 of which resulted in a fatality. And in 2020, we had 89 total pedestrian crashes, 4 of which resulted in a fatality. And in 2019, we had 1, and in 2018, we had 9. These numbers definitely increased due to the pandemic. A lot of people, we weren't enforcing traffic laws back then just because of the pandemic and everything going on. But and just a reminder, like 100% of these crashes happen outside of crosswalks. So people are just crossing the road and not going to the next intersection and using a crosswalk. So a lot of the drivers aren't seeing these people as they cross the roadway. The last fatality that I had on Solace Creek Parkway, it happened right across from Forsyth Hospital. The pedestrian was crossing from Haynes Mall onto the hospital, and it was late at night, it was dark, so the driver could not see him. And there was a crosswalk just right next to, right up next to the intersection. These are some safety tips for drivers. So things that drivers can do to reduce pedestrian fatalities. Number one, just stop for pedestrian in a crosswalk. Follow the speed limit, never pass a stopped vehicle at a crosswalk, and slow down in school zones. And these are from some tips for pedestrian. Number one, pay attention. Avoid using electronic devices such as iPad and cell phones. Use the shoulder and face oncoming traffic, and use sidewalk when available and be visible. Especially at night, it's definitely beneficial to wear something reflective where drivers can see you. This brings us to school zone safety. Just to remind drivers, I know school is out now, but with things going back to normal, we're definitely going to see an increase in school zone violation. So on a 2-lane roadway with a center turning lane, vehicles supposed to stop in all directions, including the turning lanes. On a 2-lane roadway with double yellow line, vehicles supposed to stop in both directions. And on a roadway with 4 lanes or more with a center turning lane, only the vehicles traveling in the same direction as the school bus supposed to stop. The vehicles traveling in the opposite direction supposed to use caution. Same thing here on a roadway with 4 lanes or more with a median barrier. Vehicles traveling in the same direction as the school bus supposed to stop. If you're traveling the opposite direction, just use caution. Just a little reminder, reduce your speed as you drive through the city, and just don't drive distracted. Avoid using cell phones and navigation system and everything else in the car. I think that's the end. Any questions? Yes, so in 2019, the numbers were definitely lower, and that's because we, in 2019, I believe we had over 10,000 traffic arrests, so it definitely reduced the number of traffic fatality. And then, like I said, in 2020, the pandemic happened, and there was a lot of restriction with, making contact with people and stuff. So we definitely reduced our traffic enforcement in 2020, so the numbers definitely did increase from 2019 to 2020. Same thing. The fatalities in 2019 were a lot lower than in 2020. We definitely did see an increase in 2020. And 2021 as well. Yes, ma'am. You mean in 2020 or? Yes, absolutely. Because in 2019, even though like the pandemic was just getting started back then, like I said, our enforcement, we were out here just stopping cars like almost every day. So we had more enforcement in 2019, and then in 2020, our enforcement definitely reduced, even though the pandemic was definitely at its peak at that point. We reduced our enforcement, but I don't know if there was more people out in 2020 or 2019, but I know when it comes to our stat, we weren't, I don't want to say we weren't stopping cars like we were supposed to, but we definitely reduced it just because of the restrictions. Yes, ma'am. Like I said, I've always preached that traffic stop is one of those things you can get anything you want out of a traffic stop when it comes to warrants, guns, drugs, anything you want. So we're not just mainly focusing on traffic laws. We'll be focusing on everything. If we stop a car and that person has a warrant, or we find a gun, or it has drugs, we're gonna definitely enforce that.
Good morning. I'm Rod Ring with the City of Winston-Salem Department of Transportation. I'd like to take just a few quick minutes to give you an overview of our traffic calming program. Back in early 2000, the city council members adopted what we call our traffic calming policy. Prior to that, we didn't have a mechanism to address mainly speeding concerns on residential streets. The policy sets forth a process by which neighborhood folks can get together, form a task force, submit a petition for traffic calming, and we'll work with that task force to come up with a collaborative effort to address mainly speeding problems. It's a highly interactive process that involves at least one neighborhood meeting to send out the proposed plan to the neighborhood. Ultimately, it culminates in a vote that requires at least 70% of the adjacent property owners to approve the plan. And after that, the approval takes place, we take it to council for council approval, funding, and then we send it to our field crews for installation. There's mainly two different types of traffic calming measures that are at our disposal. We have what we call horizontal measures, which could be as simple as markings, edge line, center line. It could be curb extensions, traffic islands. In certain instances, it could even be traffic circles. The other category of traffic calming measures are vertical measures, typically what most folks think of as speed humps or speed cushions. In both of those different measures, what we're trying to do is influence driver behavior. Most of us want to get where we're going as quickly as possible without hurting ourselves and anyone else. So what we're trying to do is influence that behavior by lowering drivers' level of comfort, either visually or physically. So that is a real broad stroke description of the City of Winston-Salem's traffic calming policy. If you'd like for more information on the policy, you can go to our website at cityofwinston-salem.org, Transportation Department, and then Safety. You can contact CityLink to request more information, or you can contact our office at 336-727-2708. I'll be happy to entertain any questions. All right, thank you.
That includes today's news conference. If you all have any questions, please feel free to, Chief Thompson.
I'm sorry, Ms. Boyd was not aware of this. Just since this news conference has been going on, I've been provided some updated information on our last homicide due to the efforts of, continued efforts into the investigation by members of the Winston-Salem Police Department. We, as we speak, have just completed serving a murder warrant for the murder of Miss Glenda Corrier, 84-year-old Glenda Corrier, the grandmother of our shooter and resident of Taborview. As I said, this is unfolding right now, but I wanted to provide you guys the latest information I've received. And I believe Mr. Scott, is that it? Mr. Scott. So Mr. Scott has been charged, William Scott has been charged with the murder of his grandmother, 84-year-old Glenda Corrier, here in Winston-Salem. I'm sure you probably want to know about what's going on with his mother, that homicide, and I'm going to just refer you to the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. As you know, they are handling that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Thompson. If you all have any questions, you can direct them towards me. My email address is kirab@wspd.org, and I will see that your questions get answered. Thank you all.